Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We are here. The day has finally come. We are here for WrestleMania predictions. Um, we decided we were going to break this up into two videos. I think putting it all in one would be a lot. And I think it kind of makes most sense just to separate them in the night in terms of when they will be taking place. So, without further ado, let's get started with WrestleMania 41 Night One predictions. These aren't in really aren't in any necessary order outside of maybe just how I think maybe they should or could be put on. But the outcomes pretty much remain the same. Obviously, if as far as what we know, just the two main events. So we'll go from there. Kicking things off with what I think, if Jey Uso is to do what everyone expects him to do, will probably be a good start to WrestleMania Night One, depending on which side you're on, I suppose. But yeah, Jey Uso versus Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship. Um, yeah, what can we say on this that we haven't already said? We've made it abundantly clear which side KP and I are on here, but yeah, this has been I think probably the biggest build in terms of how long it's been taking place. Um, but yeah, so I think where this is in the card could play a big part. If Jay is to win, which I think most probably think that is going to happen. Yeah, every time we see this underdog story, that tends to be the case. Baby faces winning their, overcoming that monster at Mania. We've seen that story play out a few times, right? So I think that's kind of where we're headed here, though. Although I will note, and I think I've noted it before, and I'm going to do it one more time. I think Gunther winning here would be one of the best heel reactions and builds to a heel that we could have ever gotten. I don't know if that's going to happen, but well, in fact, I'm quite certain it won't. But especially for the casual audience, it just wouldn't resonate with them as it would with us diehards. But anyways, just want to put that out there. I think that would be great for business, as Triple H would say. KP, who do you think is going to win this match, and why?
I don't really have much to say that's different to what you've already said, but I will weigh in with my piece. I think that Jey Uso is pretty much guaranteed to win this, right? Unfortunately speaking, I don't want him to. I don't think he should. Don't think he deserves to. But it in terms of looking at the story and everything that's gone into it and the massive build and everything that it means to Jay, it just makes sense for him to win, which is such a shame because I I really don't want that to happen. I would love, like you said, if Gunter was to win, that monumental heat that he would get, the crazy, crazy levels of heat from the WWE universe, the crowd, whatever, it would just be awesome. It would be great, but I don't think they're going to capitalize on that. I think they will go with Jey Uso. He's very over with the crowd for some reason, and yeah. I'm gonna say WrestleMania is gonna start in the worst way possible, but get the worst out the way first, I suppose.
That's one way to look at it, and also it's like I tell myself this all the time because sometimes I know you and I both get caught up in the emotions of the story that they're telling us. But even if Gunther loses the title here, it doesn't mean that Jay is going to be a champion for months and months and months, like a lot of champions are. It feels like even before he's gotten the title, he's already kind of slipping. In terms of how over he is with the crowd, especially with the diehards. So. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it may leave a sour taste in our mouth, but who's to say that he still has the title by SummerSlam even, and maybe Gunther gets it back or moves on to something else. He certainly has had title for longer than most. So in terms of how long he's been on main, so yeah, we'll see how this one goes, and we will just react and make the best of what what we can. So moving on to the next match, we have Jade Cargill and Naomi. This has been an interesting build, and I feel like that's going to be a common theme and something I'm going to say here a lot, especially with night one. Um, we still have, I think for me, the biggest thing here is the elephant in the room, and the elephant's name is Bianca. I feel like her not being mentioned here and would be a mistake on our part simply because that feels like an unfinished story. Now, whether that story is to, continue tonight or if it continues in the week ahead, we'll find out. But I feel like that story is still looming. And I think the fact that this match and Bianca's triple threat match are on different nights, I think that's for a very good reason. So, um, again, not a guarantee, but obviously, I think that is the elephant in the room that needs to be addressed. With that being said, WWE has put themselves in between a rock and a hard place here. And because Naomi is killing it as a heel, by far the most I've ever liked her as a character. Never been a huge fan of her. I respect her in-ring abilities, but I've just never been a huge fan of the glow persona. This has, taken me the opposite way, and I'm on board with this. Her heel persona. That being said, WWE really wants Jade to become a big star. So much so they sent her back to the Performance Center to work on her craft, and she's back and has most of the things you want out of a big star. You don't necessarily have to be this big, master craft in the ring, as long as you have the look and can do a few other things. You don't have to be not everyone has to be AJ Styles in the ring. So with that, I think they have an issue here. Someone has to lose this match. I guess not technically, but we're going to go ahead and go that route, just for sake of the video. Um, but I personally think that Jade needs to win here more than Naomi because Jade just came back. She needs to prove that she belongs here, and her character losing after all this just wouldn't feel. It would just wouldn't feel right. Um, on the other side of that coin, I feel like Naomi can very much recover from losing here. Yes, she just turned heel, and kind of what I mentioned between being between the rock and a hard place. If you turn heel and then you lose your first big bout, that doesn't look great either. But I feel like Naomi can easily blame it on something because she's a heel, so that kind of works out. And again, if Bianca comes into play here, we could always blame that as well. So I think I'm going with Jade here. What about you, KP? Who do you think comes out on top for this one?
Same outcome for me. I believe that Jade Cargill's going to beat Naomi. I don't think I expect to see anything from Bianca Belair in this one, which is strange because obviously, she was a very pivotal part of this whole thing brewing and coming on. She's been referenced a lot in obviously the promos from both Jade and Naomi in their respective ways and manners. But yeah, I just feel like because of what Bianca's got going on, obviously she's got her own things going down. I don't know. I feel she should be involved somehow, but I just can't really see it happening because they've just been so distanced from her ever since really the explanation from Naomi and her confession basically. I don't really think they've actually interacted in a public manner since then. So yeah, I would like it to be the case of them sort of going down that route, but I have a feeling they probably won't. But yeah, my predictions are that it's just mano a mano, no interferences or sort of distractions or other shenanigans going on. And it's going to be Jay Cargill going over Naomi in this one. But really, really big fan of what Naomi's been doing recently. Like you said, Jade just coming back. She does pretty much need this. Otherwise, what's going on really. So yeah, I'm expecting an interesting contest and Jade to come out on top.
Yeah, it's strange with that story though. You had that happen in Elimination Chamber, and then kind of really not much of anything. But yeah, another conversation from another video. We continue on to the next match, which has the War Raiders going up against the New Day. Um, yeah, I think this one's pretty obvious. I think the New Day had a tremendous heel turn. And unfortunately, WWE, I feel like kind of dropped the ball on them. I feel like in terms of capitalizing, having brought back Big E for that moment was fantastic, but didn't really capitalize it like they could have, in my opinion. Nothing against the War Raiders and or the tag division on Raw as a whole, but I think we could all agree that it hasn't been great, especially comparatively speaking to the SmackDown division. So with that, I think this is a good opportunity for reset. We know both of these teams will put on a hell of a match. Um, and I think with just that, I think the New Day winning here, um, allows us to refresh and kind of get a new perspective on it. And I mentioned it in a different video, but I think that would be a great opportunity for the New Day to feud with maybe an upcoming team from NXT. Um, KP, what are your thoughts on this one? And who do you have winning this one?
I've been a little bit back and forth on this one. I feel like it could genuinely go either way. The War Raiders haven't really held the titles on for that long, so I think they're still relatively early in their reign. But then the New Day, yeah, you make a great point. The heel turn was big, it was great, it was well done. And then yeah, maybe a little bit of the momentum has sort of slipped aside, and it's not really been as big for the New Day as it could have been since then. So I mean, a win here would change all of that, and it would probably elevate them back up to that level of heat that they were getting at the very early stages of their heel turns. So I think ultimately this probably does more for the New Day winning this matchup than it does for the War Raiders. So yeah, I think I probably would go with Kofi and Xavier to get the win, purely based on what it would look like afterwards. And I think it would look better for New Day to win this one. So I kind of feel like it's a bit unlucky for the War Raiders because maybe they're in the wrong place at the wrong time, perhaps. I don't know. But yeah, it just seems that has to be the best decision. New Day winning just to get that heat back on top, really sort of capitalize on that heel turn, which I feel like, yeah, it did slip off for a little bit. But this will be a nice chance to sort of like turn that tide back around and to switch things up and go in the right direction for the New Day. And then maybe, go on from there on and really generate a sort of like really, really strong heel run afterwards. I think that's probably the best idea. So yeah, I'll go New Day, but I I do think it could go either way this one. I'll be perfectly honest about that.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, you took the gas off the New Day for a while, but you've definitely seen it be put back on, especially the last few weeks. And yeah, nothing against the War Raiders. It's just they're booking. Yeah, they haven't been doing many things that are super interesting in terms of storytelling. Obviously, their in ring work is always fantastic, and why everyone loves them, but not much else to write home, at least for me, about. So moving on to the next match. We have Rey Mysterio versus El Grande Americano. This is another one I'm torn on. In one corner having Rey Mysterio at Mania, and you hate to go against him just solely because of the fact we don't know how many more manias he has in him. I think actually it was made. One of the commentators noted this week that Rey Mysterio seems to be able to keep away from Father Time, and just having him said that makes me think, and maybe that's why I'm thinking this way, is that you don't know how many more matches he has at Mania, so it just feels like it would probably be best that he does get this win. He's been kind of bested here quite a bit with this feud. I know it's a pretty new one and a very short one, but even still. And so on the other side of that coin, El Grande Americano getting the win. Obviously, him debuting here at Mania, winning his first match would be a great kickstart his career. So with that being said, just on the spot, I think I'm going to go El Grande Americano, and I think we can continue this feud. It feels like just because of how new it is. But given time, I think obviously these two guys will make for an incredible match. And who knows, maybe a mask versus mask match at some point. I think that's always on the table and very intriguing in this particular scenario. What about you, KP? Who do you have coming out of this one?
Well, I think when you put it down to the simplistic side of things here, you got Rey Mysterio, obviously, veteran of the business, been around for a very long time. El Grande Americano, maybe somebody who has obviously been, lighting up, certain other areas of the world and, being such a stalwart in other countries for such a long period of time as well. But making his WrestleMania debut and, on the big stage against someone like Rey Mysterio, I think it's got to be El Grande Americano, right? He's been absolutely shot up to this position, only recently appearing on the main roster out of nowhere seemingly, and yeah, already has a big time matchup against Rey Mysterio. I think you gotta capitalize on that whilst you can. So I think yeah, the build has been quite interesting. Obviously, he's been teaming up with the likes of the American made guys. Especially the Creed brothers and Ivy. Now I'm not sure where Chad Gable's been in all this, but that's quite interesting to note down perhaps. But yeah, I think Ray is he's sort of been second best quite a lot here, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And I think that Ray's maybe helping put this new guy over, which is absolute credit and to the professional that Rey Mysterio really really is. But I'm going to go with El Grande Americano with the win. I just think it makes more sense. I think it's a nice way to get him sort of involved in the WWE scene and to showcase him in the biggest of moments for sure. But yeah, Rey Mysterio. Um, that mask versus mask idea sounds really cool. Sounds really promising. So I could definitely see maybe like El Grande Americano wins this one, and then we do maybe get that later down the line to sort of like maybe even the score and to really settle it for a once and for all. But yeah, El Grande Americano with the win.
Yeah, and it's truly incredible how fast El Grande Americano has gone up the card and able to debut here. So without further ado, we should move on to the next match. And what's one of the ones I'm looking forward to the most, probably from night one, and that's LA Knight and Jacob Fatu. Um, yeah, we've seen Jacob Fatu stand tall most recently, but this is truly a battle of two of the most over superstars in the business. And unfortunately, and I feel like I've said this with a few others already, but someone does have to lose. At least in for this video, we're going to pick someone to lose. So I I personally believe that that person is LA Knight. Nothing against him, but I feel like he has lost a bit of the fizzle, and I have said that, mentioned that on prior videos. While he's still over, he just doesn't quite have the momentum of Jacob Fatu, and so maybe if that's just comparatively speaking, it's not the end of the world. Jacob Fatu has a ton of momentum, and ever since he arrived in WWE, has the things he's able to do in the ring and just the energy he brings is something truly unique in my opinion. So it's not the end all be all, but I feel like LA Knight does not really, it doesn't affect him much in the grand scheme of things, losing to someone like Jacob Fatu. And with Jacob Fatu being at the level he currently is, I think it's funny that how everything flips so quickly, because at one point, LA Knight was on the opposite side of this, right? He was that star that was super hot and needed to be on the winning side of things sooner rather than later to avoid losing out on that momentum. And now it's kind of flipped. So unfortunately for LA Knight, kind of wrong place, wrong time. But I do think it is best for business to give this title over to Jacob Fatu and continuing that storyline with the new bloodline. What about you, KP? Where are you at on this one?
I think that I'm basically in the side of Jacob Fatu as well. I think, even though LA Knight hasn't really held it for that long since obviously taking it off of Shinsuke Nakamura recently, I think that maybe it was built to maybe pass it over to that of Jacob Fatu. I think it just makes maybe more sense to have done that rather than go from Shinsuke to Jacob. That maybe wouldn't have worked quite as well. But I'm a big fan of LA Knight. A lot of people will know that about me, but I think that it just makes a lot more sense for Fatu to win this one. He's had such an incredible, year since being on the main roster. The fact that that's a year ago, right, near enough, is crazy to me. But yeah, time really flies by. But he's been brilliant since he's arrived, and I think that he's been very, very consistent. Ultimately, one of the most entertaining guys since being there as well. And I think that should be rewarded in some way, and no better place to be rewarded than at WrestleMania, winning the United States Championship against someone like LA Knight, who's equally been very very good himself over the last couple of years, obviously since he's arrived on the scene and got really over. So yeah, I think LA, I'm enjoying the reign. I wouldn't say it's a bad one. I wouldn't say I want it to end. But when someone like Jacob Fatu comes along, I think you really got to capitalize on that. And I think if they don't do that here, then I think they're maybe missing a trick. So I'm going to go with Jacob Fatu to win and to dethrone LA Knight.
Yeah, seems like we're on the same page there. So we should move on to the next one. And Charlotte Flair versus Tiffany Stratton for the WWE Women's Championship. Yeah, this build was pretty flat, and then it got real quick. Um, so much so to I would say that besides the John Cena, besides the two main events, I would argue that this match is being talked about more so than any other match. Yeah, I'm really torn between this one. Unfortunately, you know, I do really want Tiffany to win, but unfortunately, I'm not going to bet against Charlotte at Mania. I've done it way too many times, and I'm usually proved wrong. So I can't let my wants overcome what I think will happen in terms of this prediction here. So I hope I'm wrong. I'm hoping that I think what I see a lot is people thinking that Charlotte can win this, and then kind of Tiffany can have a best of three and then win the next two, proving that she had room to grow, and then she does grow, and then ends up overcoming and beating the queen that way. But I feel I'm kind of on the other end of it. I think Tiffany can win this and prove that maybe Charlotte is human, is and you can work this into like working on her character too. Maybe she's not the best in the business anymore because I think that story to me is one that A isn't done near as often, and B is much more intriguing. Like character work for Charlotte in terms of realizing, you know, well, maybe I'm not the queen anymore, and kind of doubting herself. I think makes for a much more interesting and story that's not told near as often as the proposed Charlotte winning here, and then having Tiffany back to chasing. So that's my opinion. KP, what is yours on this one?
This has been a really hard one for me because, yeah, like you mentioned, the build was very much a tale of two halves. I very much enjoyed the second half more than the first, that's for sure. But I think with Tiffany Stratton here, she's obviously at the very start of her main roster career, or near enough anyway, um, within the first couple of years. And Charlotte Flair, who's someone of, just veteran status. And I think naturally you go into this matchup and you just think Charlotte Flair's going to win no matter what the situation is. And the build would sort of dictate that because of how dominant she's been, whether it's been vocally, whether it's been standing tall on the majority of the occasions. It just seems to have really favored Charlotte Flair in that respect. Um, so I think Tiffany naturally is to be believed to be the underdog going into this one, even though she's the champion. And maybe that makes me think that Tiffany's going to win because of that. I think that a win for Tiffany would skyrocket her like nothing else would in this position. Beating someone of Charlotte Flair's magnitude is absolutely incredible, and that would no doubt do Tiffany's career an absolute world of good. I can't help but think though that Charlotte's been put in this position for a reason, and it's maybe to just end Tiff's reign at WrestleMania. Like we've seen Charlotte do on so many occasions, getting a title shot, winning it, after recently coming back. And this is obviously the first time that we've had that since she's recently come back. Obviously, she won the Royal Rumble, and this is obviously the moment that we're going to be getting here from there. I I am going to go with Charlotte Flair to win. I just think that it's bound to happen for some reason, just standing out in my gut. And I feel bad for Tiff because I don't think her reign should end yet. Far from it. I think she's been great in the role, but I just think, yeah, Charlotte's just been levels above, and I guess we'll see what happens at Mania. But Charlotte Flair to win.
Yeah, unfortunately, unless I'm proved wrong and Charlotte loses at Mania, she has, but you know, not very often. So unfortunately, I do feel like that is where we are headed. But hopefully, we're here on Sunday and we're proved wrong, and we're very happy about it. So with that, we'll continue on to the next match, and we have arrived the main event of night one. Um, what is rivaled only by the Cena Cody. Some I've heard people say they like this one even better. So without further ado, let's talk about this one. Seth Roman CM Punk. What more do we need to say, right? Um, Obviously, Paul Heyman is going to come into play here. It's just a matter of what role does he play. It's clear to me as clear as day that Punk and Roman are going to get into it over Heyman. It's just a matter of where does Heyman end up falling? Who does he end up helping? We've seen that time and time again. Heyman always comes into play on these kind of matches. I think we mentioned it on the prior videos too, but I'm not going to rule out Heyman helping Seth. And to me, I think that makes the most interesting story because we've already seen Heyman work with 2 out of 3 of these guys. And I think Seth, as a heel with Heyman behind him, could rival that of anyone else that Heyman has worked with. The only issue is with Heyman's, with the people that Heyman had worked with before, they kind of needed Heyman. Whereas Seth Rollins obviously does not need Heyman whatsoever. And so if this was in that scenario where Heyman was to side with Seth and kind of become his mouthpiece, well, he doesn't need it. He doesn't need it at all. And granted, Punk didn't either, but for everyone else that he's worked with, you could make the case that they did need him. So I think that's kind of the only thing I've been tossing back and forth in my head. As far as who's going to win, I feel like the obvious choice is Punk. um, I'll call it the boring choice, but it does seem obvious, finally getting that main event spot and him winning. It just feels like that would be very much, especially considering night two's main event and how I think a lot of us think that's going to go. I think Punk getting the win would be the feel good moment there, your feel good main event, if you will. Um, but yeah, I think there are a ton of options, an unlimited amount of options they can do here. Just a matter of which one they will go with. I think we can debate that for probably a while. But yeah, I would prefer Seth win, with or without Heyman's help. I feel like Roman winning here is just we've been there, done that very very recently as well with Heyman. So I feel like that is the least likely option. So kind of stuck between Punk and Seth, and based on the night two main event, again, I feel like Punk is probably the choice here. What about you, KP? What do you make of this, and what do you think? Where do you think Heyman falls into play here?
Heyman's an interesting one because obviously, you've gone on to explain. I won't sort of like go too deeply into that, but I think it's awkward because was Seth really serious about the favor that he said that he was going to request from Paul Heyman? I don't know if that was serious or not, but it makes you think maybe it was. Um, but yeah, that could be something maybe on the slide that maybe comes up in this match, and then obviously we see what happens, and possibly we go from there. But that's just maybe one avenue that we can go down. There are obviously several that we could explore and go on to. But breaking down the match itself, I think Seth, Roman, and Punk, it it could go a number of ways. I think Roman winning isn't outside the realms of possibility, but I think it probably is the least likely. So I'm like you on that one. I would agree with that. Punk, yeah, him being in his first WrestleMania main event, technically, I think that it does sort of make you think that he could win this one, but not necessarily. I think there's probably a bit more to it than this because Seth Rollins, I think, has got the most fascinating possible endgame that can come from this one. And whether that is alignment with Paul Heyman, whether that's just other methods of going on after this one, I'm not too sure. But yeah, I would say that there are more possibilities for Seth than there are for either of the other guys. What happens if Roman wins? All right, he wins the another WrestleMania main event, and he probably just asserts himself and looks to try and go for the championship over on SmackDown. I guess. Like, I feel like he would do that whether he won or lost. It wouldn't really matter. CM Punk, if he was to win this one, okay, he'd win on his WrestleMania main event debut, which would be great for him, which would be obviously be fantastic for himself. But I don't really think it changes his sort of position on the card. He's already that kind of guy who is obviously very well trusted, and he's given all these amazing opportunities and positions on the cards and stuff each and every time he's on there. So I don't really think a win or loss changed anything for him either. But for Seth Rollins, I feel like it's very difficult for him because he's been up there. He's been the world champion. It's been a year since he held gold, and I feel like he's maybe got a little bit lost in the shuffle sometimes. And he's been out and he's been back and whatnot, and he's sort of been fighting for his position. But a win in this match for himself, and winning this triple threat would be not only huge for him, but if something was to happen alongside Paul Heyman, or if something was to happen, just generally speaking, whether he does go down a more heel type route, I think would be just brilliant for himself and his character, and that opens up so many different options. So I think because of what could possibly go on, I'm going to go with Seth winning because it's just got a lot more potential, and I think he probably needs it more than the other two do at this particular point in their careers. So yeah, I'll go Seth Rollins to win.
I like your thinking, and I would be very happy to see that outcome as opposed to the one I drew up. So with that, this would be the main event of night one, and that would be the end of our discussions for this first night. Um, and we will be back shortly with night two predictions. And this probably be uploaded maybe at the same time. But yeah, curious to hear your all's thoughts on night one of Mania. Do you think night one looks better than night two? And which matches are you looking forward to the most? But yeah, with that, this has been another episode of The Push with Nick and KP, and we'll see you next time. Take care.